Hello guys and welcome to my channel and to my first ever deck tag of Kathril Aspect Warper. So I'm fairly new to the deck tag game and this is my first video ever, so I hope you like it. So let's jump into it. So the card that we're gonna discuss is Kathril Aspect Weaver. What does he do you ask? Let me read the cards. When Kathril Aspect Weaver enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on any creature you control if a creature card in your graveyard has flying. Repeat this process for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample and Vigilance. Then put a +1/+1 counter on Kathril for each counter put on this creature this way. Time for a little bit of story time, guys. When I first saw this card, I immediately lost my mind. It's such a cool way to handle the keywords, and it's so insane that the graveyard is involved too. It's perfect for those colors. So yeah, I made a deck from it, and now I'm gonna show you my deck and discuss the cards in this. And remember, this is my deck tag. I'm open for suggestions in the comments, so please let me know what you think and what you would like to see in the deck. So let's begin. The first category we're gonna discuss is the keyword soup category. So as we know, Kathril loves keywords. We're gonna see what creatures we should run that have many keywords, which creatures have the more important keywords, the more combat related, the more protection related keywords. After that we're gonna look at the grave filling aspect of the deck. So how are we gonna get our grave full for turn 5 as fast as possible, because we don't want to play Kathril as a 6/6. We want to play him like 10/10 with double strike indestructible, like he will never leave the board. Yeah, so the Kathril needs to be able to like knock players out on turn 6 and turn 7, as which depends on the double strike, or yeah. So we're gonna see how that works. Then we have the draw and grave. We're gonna see which cards we're gonna run that will boost our draw engine and our graveyard engine at the same time. The last category we're gonna look at is the Reanimator category, because we are in Absan and those colors are perfect for this. And especially if it doesn't work with Kathril, it can work with the Reanimator spells, because some meta depending, sometimes it's possible that Kathril doesn't finish the job, especially in 4-player games. So in late game, so that we can in the late game can rely on our big Reanimator spells. Even when Kathril is like removed or enchanted, there still is a possibility to use our graveyard as a resource to finish the game. So the first category we're gonna look at are the keywords, and especially the creatures with many keywords. So I'm talking about like 4 keywords minimum a card. So when these big boys go into the grave, you really know that Kathril will be buffed AF. We're gonna so we have a Chroma, Angel of Red, we got Cetalpa, Primal Dawn, and Sunblade Angel. So these guys you especially want to tutor up and put in the grave, because they're gonna give your commander a massive boost. You got a note with a Chroma, she gives haste and protection from black and red, but Kathril can't gain haste. We got solutions for this problem later in the video, but you gotta know Kathril can't gain haste or protection, so those keywords are not as great, but still a Chroma is a super viable card, and the same goes for Cetalpa and Sunblade Angel. We're also going to look at the utility creature cards with keywords. So these creature cards are good on the field as well as in the grave. So we have Leyline Prowler. It's a 3-drop which ramps us and brings 2 keywords. You gotta know in this deck, so I switched Cultivate for this creature because the creatures synergize more with my commander, and I know I'm playing in green and I should run Cultivate, but it's better, I think, to run creatures like this, which also synergize and have the same effect. Then we have Sylvan Carotide, which ramps us also, and I think it's a better option than Birds of Paradise in this deck, because it also brings a keyword with her. And then we have Doom Whisperer, which also brings 2 keywords, but is a beast on the field. He lets us surveil for 2 life, so we can like fill our grave up as much as we like and then play Kathril on our turn 5. So this creature really is pretty good on the field, but also in the grave. Then we're gonna look at creatures who grant Kathril protection, so that he can stick on the board no matter what. So he doesn't isn't affected by spot removal or board vibes. So I'm talking about indestructible, hexproof. So first of all, we have the angel that everybody fears, Evison, Angel of Hope, which grants indestructible. We also put a Carnage Tyrant in the deck for the trample and the hexproof, especially the hexproof off. And I run all the Amonkhet gods in the appropriate colors, of course, which grant indestructible, and especially our Ketra is pretty good because she also grants double strike and Bontu, which grants menace, so that he is harder to block. The next category I call the easy win category, because these keywords are based on the early kills, on the combat aspect of Kathril, and on how to knock your opponents as quickly as possible before they can't even do a thing about this little insect. So I want to say this, it's very important that you put double strike in the deck, and there are not a lot of creatures that have double strike and another keyword. So I put my top 3 creatures that I run. So I run an Aven Sunstrike and a Sky and Skirmisher, and of course a Ketra, so as you already know, for the double strike aspect. Especially when you have Rogue's Passage. You can make it Kathril unblockable with double strike, so then it's gonna be very difficult for your opponents to do something about that. The last category about the keywords are the non-keywords creatures. These creatures don't belong in the grave, but are pretty good to interact the same way as Kathril in different ways. So let's take a look. We first have our friend Splinterfright, which grows bigger when our grave grows bigger. It's a pretty good addition to the deck, and he also has trample, so when he gets in the grave from like a dredge effect or something, he's not useless. And then we have Skullbride, a walking grave. So this card, you probably know it, it's a very cool interaction. So you gotta remember, Kathril places counters on creatures. And an ability of Skullbriar is that counters don't move from him even if he changes zones. So eventually everything will stay on him no matter what happens to him, except for going back to the hand, of course. But I have a little bit of a problem with this card because he's only a 1/1 and he gets he gets bigger after combat, but still it's a pretty slow approach of winning. So it's I didn't include him in the deck, but I know that you can include him, and I get that some people include him in the Kathril deck. Then we have a Cairn Wanderer. He's a 4/4, which eventually copies every ability in the grave. So what I used to do with this card is I tutor something up with a Jared's Order. I toss a big fatty in the grave like Zetalpa, and I'm keeping my Cairn Wanderer in my hand. So I'm gonna play him next turn. It's a pretty good card. He also wins games. He has eventually the same ability as Kathril. So then I have a World Shaper. It's a decent card. I run him, especially for the land part, because when you put stuff in the grave, it's mostly random. It's from dredge effects, and so it can happen that a lot of lands end up in the grave. So you want to attack with this guy, but people usually won't block him because then you will ramp insane. And if he attacks, he will fill your grave. So it's pretty fun. If people let him die, sure, you get all the lands back. If he attacks, sure, nice, he fills the grave. So for this last card, I really thought it about a lot of time to include it in the deck, but I think it's a pretty good card, but it's a risky card, you know, it's Soul Flayer. Soul Flayer has an ability to delve the creature cards in your graveyard and get every keyword from him. So eventually also a bit the same of Kathril, but you gotta remember it delves, and delves exiles creature cards in the graveyard. For example then, if Soul Flayer gets killed, you don't have any resource left in your graveyard. So when you want to play Kathril, it doesn't trigger as much. So as I said it, these cards are the cards that you want in your hands and on the battlefield, but not in the grave. So especially with cards like Jared's Order, where you can search 2 creatures up, put 1 in the grave and put 1 in your hand, you want to search for these kind of creatures to put in the hand. and to put a big haymaker in the grave. Okay, so after the keywords, we're gonna look at the grave filling aspect of the deck. So how are we gonna get these cards that we discussed earlier? How are we gonna get them in the grave? And most of all, how are we gonna get them in the grave before turn 5? Let's see. The first way to grave fill in this deck is the dredge way. We make use of this mechanic to fill up our grave with lots of stuff and hopefully the big creatures that we want. So we run cards like Life from the Loam, Stinkweed Imp, Golgari Grave Troll and Dark Blast. I don't run Golgari Tug because it doesn't have a keyword on it, so you gotta remember when, for example, Stinkweed Imp gets in the grave, he has flying. And so that's an extra bonus. And Golgari Grave Troll is, yeah, it's just too good. It's dredge 6, so that's insane. I also like Dark Blast because you can play it easy on a random creature on the board, and it gets in your grave, and you can start dredging. And Life from Rome is just a pretty good card, also to have in hand to return those lands that you got in the grave or back in the hand. This card is also a super important part of the deck because what happens if you get those big haymakers or that creatures that you want in the grave in your hand, you want to discard them into the grave. So I'm gonna discuss some free discard outlets that I run in this deck to make sure that if I draw a big creature that I want in the grave, I can get it in the grave quite easily. It's also good to notice when you play Kathril, you can, in response of the enter ability, you can discard all your creatures. So that way you are safe from exile grave effects. So like you're safe from Bazooka Box, not Rest in Peace, but yeah, you gotta take some. So good discard outlets are free discard outlets like a Lotlel Troll, a Nose Constrictor and Putrid Imp. Lotlel Troll is especially good because it has Trample and he has the ability to regenerate itself, so it's a self-protecting discard outlet. Nose Constrictor is also pretty good when it gets in the grave too, because Reach is it's not a common keyword and it's pretty good to get that extra +1/+1 counter on Kathril. Putrid Imp also pretty great, has flying, does its job, free discard, and when it gets in the grave, you at least get one keyword. You gotta remember one thing though, you gotta know this card is card disadvantage. So you essentially giving you less cards to work with. So that's why I also run effects like Dark Deal to make everybody discard at the table, that you don't only have the effect, the not so fun effect of. And if you really hate having friends, there are always options like Necrogen Mist and Progression, which are a bit more of the stacksy take on things. Another way to get your grave fill is with tutor effects. So let's look what we have in store for this category. I run cards like Entomb, Jared's Order and Birdie Life to tutor a lot of creatures and put them straight in the grave, so the creatures that I want. And especially for the casual play, you can Entomb and Reanimate to get an Avison on turn 2. We also run some creatures that make us fill our grave. I'm talking about creatures with upkeep triggers to dump cards in our graveyard, so Unrealm Lich is a pretty good option, Nyx Weaver is amazing, and so we already seen this card, World Shaper, pretty good also, but it's on an attack trigger and not an upkeep trigger. A pretty good card. The next big category we're gonna look at is the draw and grave category. In this category we find cards that let us draw and let us fill our grave at the same time. I play cards like Ransack the Lab, Grisly Salvage and Glacial Revelation. So cards that let us mostly look at the top cards of our library, put some of them into our hands and other ones into our graveyard. I sometimes switched very important black draw spells like Read the Bones to for these cards, because these cards synergize better with the commander, and yeah, that's why I run them, and I prefer them both over you know, the staple black draw spells. The last category is the Reanimator category. So I say it again, when the plan doesn't work with Kathril, which is unlikely because they can kill on turn 5 or turn 4 maybe even, you also have your backup plan of the Reanimator package. So all the things you put into the grave can come back and not only your grave, but also sometimes creatures from other graveyards. First of all, we have the classic Reanimate. It's a pretty cool combo with Entomb. So this deck is possible to get whatever you want on turn 2. So if you want an Evison on turn 2, if you have Entomb and Reanimate, you can do it, no problem. Then we have the classic Animate Tet to get one creature out of the graveyard back. We also run Dread Return because of the flashback ability. When it gets into the grave, we can get it back for its flashback cost. And to top it all off, we run the biggest and baddest of them all. I run Eerie Ultimatum, and if your budget allows it, you also can run Rise of the Dark Realms to finish the game off. So I'm not gonna cover the sorceries and the spot removal in this card. I have the deck list in the links below. If you can, there you can see the whole deck. But I do want to mention two special cards that you don't see often in many commander decks. Or not mine, in my playgroup. So I run Divine Reckoning, each player chooses a creature, they choose Destroy the Rest. So that's pretty good in this in this deck, because you obviously choose Kathril and the rest probably won't have a bigger and powerful creature than you. For lands, I also run Hall of the Bandit Lord to gain that very important haste mechanic on him. I had games where I played this Kathril with haste and immediately knocked down my opponents. It's a pretty good card, and I would definitely recommend that you run it. Really. Okay, so that was it for my deck. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some new things and my looks on things. I know my talking isn't very fluently at the moment. It's pretty hard to learn to talk without saying and stuff. But I really enjoyed making this deck, and let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Let me know your take on this commander. Smash the like button, I really appreciate it. Maybe even subscribe, you can do that if you want. I will probably make more of these. I hope you all stay well in these times, because it's not an easy time, especially to be a Magic player, and I hope you stay safe, stay home. Alright guys, thanks for listening, and I see you later. Bye.